Welcome to the LeadForward Series. My name is Thuto Masasa, Head of Advisory Services at BDO South Africa, and I'm your host on this journey of purpose, power, and possibilities. This is more than a podcast. It is a series of conversations where we get to have real stories, bold leadership lessons, as well as unspoken truth behind leadership. Because we know when we get to share our stories, not only do we give permission enough to ourselves to elevate, but we also give someone else to elevate in their leadership journey. So today, our topic is about communication, how effective communication is for leaders and the influence it has in your leadership journey. And I'm privileged today to have Nonkululeko Gobodo with me in today's episode. And one thing I can tell you, she is an absolute icon. She has paved the way for people like myself to be a chartered accountant today. We knew that it could be done before by people like her. Nonkululeko Gobodo is absolutely, as I've already said, first Black woman chartered accountant, qualifying in 1987. Underline that, 1987. She is a published author of an amazing book and leadership book called Awakened to Myself. She's a podcaster, so she's very much used to this type of setup. She's a podcaster of Unconditioned Mind, as well as CEO of Awakened Global. She's a mentor, she's a leader, and Vice Chancellor of the Walter Sisulu University. Welcome to our episode of Nonkululeko.
Thank you so much. What an introduction.
I actually am quite fascinated, by the way, on how you introduce yourself lately. How do you introduce yourself?
Yeah. Mother of three beautiful granddaughters, a retired accountant, enjoying myself at the moment.
Do you ever retire? You are busy, right? You pour wisdom into us through your podcast. And I think, just mentorship all around, without a doubt. There's lots of people that we talk to that really still gets mentored by yourself. So I don't know if retirement means
They never allow you to retire. That's the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So today's episode, as I've said, it really is about communication and communication as a tool for leaders, and how it influences people that we lead as well. You know, I spoke to one wise man and I was asking them, so what is real leadership? And they broke it down in 2 words, which got me thinking, and I've been thinking since, to say leadership is about thinking and it's about communicating. So today we're going to break down the last element, which is in the communication book. And I can say maybe taking some of the key themes out of Awakened to Myself, you specifically talk about, firstly, authenticity. You know, the critical element around authenticity and how we show up as leaders, leadership and excellence, courageous leadership and resilience. And perhaps maybe I can start with just the understanding from your journey, because this is your lived experience that you really share with us in your book. In your journey, how communication has been used as a critical tool as you build up in different situations, and I would say in different boardrooms and in your younger days, and as you evolved as well.
I suppose communication means a lot of different things to different people. And you communicate as you walk into the room, right? The way you are dressed. You may not be aware, but people are observing you. So self-knowledge is actually important, so that you know. I know, for instance, that I'm strong, so I must try to soften up a little bit when I walk into the room, so that they don't just are overwhelmed by the strong personality and things like that. And communication also, can be misunderstood. I know during the merger of Nonkululeko Gobodo, during that time, you thought you were communicating. And then when you hear the feedback from people, the very things that you thought you were communicating have been misunderstood, right? So communication, you always have to think of the listener as well. How is it going to be received? Because what you think is important and you are emphasizing may be misread by the other person. But as leaders, we communicate by not greeting people. You communicate by not walking into those open plan offices. I'm an introvert, for instance. I used to love closing my door. And that was communication. Oh, that one whose door is closed.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm an introvert. Sometimes the rush is just too much.
Sure.
Up and down, I need my quiet space as well. So I would close my door and explain that closing my door doesn't mean I'm not accessible. You're very welcome to come and knock and we can chat. So I'm just saying, as a leader, I've found that, leading people is the most difficult thing, because it's not just about you, it's about them, it's about how they experience you. Sometimes when you are working on a big thing, like the vision of Nonkululeko Gobodo, for instance, you are so focused on the vision, right? And you always have to be mindful that you are walking this journey with people.
Sure.
And what are you communicating as you walk with them? Yeah,
Sure.
It's a lot.
And I just want to pick on authenticity now. You say showing up, you've got your own personality, but you understand that you've got to show up for people. To what degree then do you become vulnerable in building that trust for people to understand who you are, and how you show up doesn't necessarily mean something else? It actually is just who I am. Today, when I close my door, it's just purely because when I think, I need to think within a space where there isn't really high energy. So vulnerability, how then do you communicate that vulnerability in building then the trust around the teams? Because to your point, you said you don't only get to be yourself, but you understand that there is people that are really supposed to be walking this journey with you.
It starts with knowing who you are. I always emphasize that if you know who you are, and knowing who you are is something that is also evolving, right? Because you see, the dynamics are changing as you grow, as you develop as a leader. For instance, you're not the same person you were when you were the first year articled and training. So I had to learn very early in life the importance of knowing who you are. Because I share in my book how I was a quiet, shy girl who was misunderstood by my own mother, who was just worried about me because I'm quiet. And from there I had low self-esteem because I believed there was something wrong with me. So when I found myself, I was put in a situation where I found myself and realized, I'm not this person that I always thought I was. I'm actually smart and strong and capable of much more, right? So I was always mindful then, walking into those spaces where, as a Black woman, people form opinions about you and expect you to fall in line with these opinions of theirs. And so that opened my eyes very early, that you've got to communicate who you are, so that people receive who you are. Because, as I'm saying, as you walk in the room, they've already
Made up their minds
about you. It's you who will change their minds when you demonstrate who you are, right? So, when you understand yourself, you understand your own strengths, your own weaknesses, for instance. I'm always very open about things I'm good at and things that I'm not good at. And I find that people in the room become comfortable also to be open about things that they are good at and things that they are not good at. So that authenticity for me is the ability to say, no, that one is not for me. I'm not going to do it that way because this is what is right for me. Just always knowing what is right for you. And that doesn't mean that you are not flexible, right? You still have to be flexible because you have to work with people. Knowing yourself for me is, if I'm being forced to do things that I'm not good at, I'm going to fail. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that failure is going to reflect on me. Yeah. So being that upfront is actually always very important to me. Authenticity for me is all about being true to yourself, right? And being consistent in who you are. You can't just present this face today and tomorrow you're presenting another face, right? And you talk about vulnerability. For me, that thing of saying, I'm not going to do it that way. Because I'm instead of forcing myself to do something that I know I'm not good at, that is being vulnerable. Because you don't know how to be received. Because people have a certain expectation of you, right?
Especially as a leader.
Exactly, you're supposed to be everything and know everything and all of that, but I learned very early that you overstretch yourself trying to be someone else, whereas if you present who you are, people accept who you are.
100%. And there's a lot of nuggets that you've raised in there. The first one is being yourself. You allow people to be themselves. As you said, if I can say these are my weaknesses and these are my strengths, it allows then the team to also know and be vulnerable enough to own their own strengths and weaknesses, which I guess that can be a strength amongst then the team. We know that Thuto is actually maybe not good at this. So somebody else within the team who's good at it, we know that they'll be able to pick it up, and be in a position then to show up strong as a team. And another nugget that I really like a lot, you say authenticity. It allows you to be who you are because you can't chop and change who you are. And therefore, as a leader, you can't confuse people. They must know who you are. Because otherwise, then tomorrow I don't know, this person now is the loudest in the room. She's the next day, she's quiet, closing doors. What am I dealing with here? So them knowing truly who you are and owning it, it allows, I guess, a very trusting environment where people can trust what you say because they can predict to some degree. Sure, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a leader, people have to understand you. They need to know what is important to you. I always say, if people that you are leading do not know what is important to you, then you are failing them because they don't know, how to show up. They don't know what to do, right? Because you have given them no clarity about what is important. Like, for instance, if they know that excellence is important to you, right? So they know in whatever they do, there must be excellence, right? If they know, for instance, that we respect people, and they know that as they enter a room, they know that they have to respect the other people, as they expect themselves to be respected. If, for instance, the bottom line is important to you, then it's clear to everybody. Guys who are working towards the bottom line here.
Sure.
And so, that clarity of communication, that people always know what is important to you.
100%.
I feel that then there's no confusion in the team as to where are we going.
I love that. It's the authenticity, the clarity, and bringing your own critical values and not necessarily confusing people if your value is respect amongst people, and the team knows, and they will show up with that. Sure, that is amazing. So you spoke briefly, maybe as we were getting into the conversation around when you were building up strategy and the vision for Seasons Aluba Gobodo. And often in the work that I do, we often do strategies for clients. There is a difference between what's being crafted and what you experience on a day-to-day. And in there is, firstly, the communication within the organization on there's been a strategy that's crafted, it's on paper, but is it actually really well understood on the ground? Is it in words that people can relate to? So I want to maybe just poke a little bit just on your story around how did you communicate your strategy to make sure now you are understood. And as you're saying, in some areas you got in the rooms and you're like, but that's not what I said. And what are some of them the shifts that you had to make as a leader to make sure that the big vision is well understood? Yeah.
I mean, I suppose as a leader, you probably understand the vision, you understand the strategy, you've sort of charted the way in terms of how that should be accomplished. But understand that you are communicating this to people who have no understanding, They're not where you are about the vision. For instance, when the whole vision of the merger and a big black accounting firm, it was scary to people.
Sure.
And I think I didn't appreciate in the beginning that this thing was just too big for people. I suppose you've dealt with your own fears and now you are ready to move forward. And I had to learn, that how you communicate this and the actions that are aligned to where we are going, right? Because you can't come up with this big vision and you don't have the courage for it, first of all. And they've got to see as you demonstrate that courage, right? And that's when that trust develops, right? And also there have to be those pockets of success in the beginning, because if there's always failure, although failure is also good because you wake up and realize that there are things that you need to adjust. But I suppose the important thing is to also listen to the people, listen to their fears. I was a single mother for a long time. And when you are a strong mother and you can see the potential in the child and you are, saying, this is what we need to do to get there and so on and so forth. And then I realized later that these things that I was saying were just too big for the kids and they didn't see how they were going to achieve these needs. So I had to tone down the rhetoric, so that it reaches them where they are. So as a leader, it's the same thing. You may have this big vision, but to people, it's just too big. And they don't see how are we going to achieve this, right? And just having that sensitivity. And I also had to understand, for instance, that people are different. There are those who they can be easily scared. They are always sort of negative about things. They see problems everywhere, And there are those who are optimistic, who can catch the vision and run with it. So I understood that I had to work with all of them, right? Those who are seeing this pothole, stop and listen, because you may be missing some things, in your rush to achieve your vision. And I learned a lot from that because there were maybe those potholes. But okay, let's fix the potholes, but there's a vision. There's somewhere where we need to get to and bring them along, afraid as they are. Be sensitive to that, but bring them along.
I'm getting, as you're saying, firstly, communication is not standard for everybody. You need to tailor it amongst your team members because you've got to be in a position to read the room and read the team members to take everybody with to the destination because no one should be left behind. And I'm also understanding, as you say, listening is important in this particular sort of communication journey. Be able to listen and listen intently, because then in some of those you may need to recraft, or just purely listening is a way of communicating and taking people with you from what you're saying. So it really is, sure, it's I guess it's such a big part of leadership, and I don't know if there's a generic school that really teaches about how to be the best communicator as a leader. And the question would be, how do we continue? And maybe it's also, you allude to it in the book in terms of continuous learning, being able to say, you will always learn. As a leader, you don't know everything. But I'll be interested to just understand how we continue to polish ourselves, to be the best that we can.
When there are issues with a leader, for instance, right? And these things don't start blowing up immediately. The thing starts somewhere, right? There are sort of those little ramblings. And as leaders, we think we know, we think our way is the only way. And that is when we then lose people, right? When we think, I know I'm the leader and you must just follow what I say. When it blows up, it's because you've just not been listening, right? Because you can just imagine that we are different personalities. We see the world differently. And yes, for us to get to the destination, we have to all walk together, right? So it means you've got to stop and listen. And I'm not saying be a weak leader who's swayed by everything what is being said.
Sure.
Right? But there are reasonable complaints and maybe unreasonable complaints. Maybe because there's just a misunderstanding amongst people, which is normal. Even that misunderstanding still needs to be sorted out in a way that is right for everybody. How do we find common ground in this disagreement of ours? So as leaders, we just wait until this thing blows up. And when by that time you've been defensive in the first place by not listening, when people were just whispering these little things, you've been ignoring those whispering. Now when it is blown out, you is blowing up all over, you're blaming it's those people instead of using even that as a moment of self-reflection. Surely it is reflecting on you as well as a leader, because how did it get here? Where were you when it got here, right? So I'm just saying, those boardroom battles that we see sometimes playing out openly, is because there was just no maturity in how you were dealing with this thing. You were not sensitive enough. I always say that you can imagine if you're working with a team and things must always be done your way. So if, for instance, I'm different from you in terms of my own worldview, then if I'm always doing things your way, I get exhausted.
Sure.
Because I'm always trying to be what you expect me to be. Whereas if you also accommodated me, you're sort of meeting me halfway. There will never be a situation where things blow up in a situation like that. But also understanding that you are the leader. You still have to lead,
Sure.
in the best possible way that right? And as leaders, we are different, you lead differently from me. And you can't expect me to lead like you.
Sure.
I mean, I will lead like myself, right? But how do I make sure that what I'm communicating is being received, is being understood, and where it's not understood, I step back and make sure that I go back to basics and improve my communication.
Sure. And now you bringing an element of how vulnerable as leaders are we in owning failure. And well, is it right to call it failure? But maybe it is learnings where you're never going to get it right all of them the times. So how important is the learnings around where we have failed ourselves, where we have failed the team, and still be able to be courageous enough to still lead forward. But the team as well can see you pitching up authentically. You're able to admit, there I was wrong. But to your point, it may not be necessarily a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength of somebody who actually has the humility to understand their blind spots.
Yes.
Sure.
I mean, we also have to just learn from our mistakes, right? I mean, you may have thought you are right at that moment, but the outcome tells the story.
Yeah.
You that cannot be denied. That the outcome is not didn't come out the way that you thought or more intended. And people will understand when you come forward in situations like that and acknowledge that, I missed that point. Maybe I didn't listen properly in that. And when they see you change your ways. For instance, that's why it is so important for people to give us feedback. We are afraid of feedback because we don't want to admit that we are wrong. Leaders who seek out feedback, then they may be shocked by the feedback, for instance. That, I didn't see it that way, I didn't see myself that way. But as they reflect now and realize that, well, that was a genuine feedback that I've received, what am I going to do about it, right? If maybe you just need to explain yourself in a way that maybe the other person also was missing something, but you must come back and rearrange how you are leading. Then when people see that you do that, that's when that trust is developed, right? That she does listen. We can see that there's a change of behavior from what you've been experiencing. Because I always say, you can't tell me how I should feel. This is how I feel about this thing. Sometimes people will explain themselves in the way that you must, now even deny how you are feeling. No, this is how this thing impacted me. This is how I feel about it. You may not agree with how I feel about it, but my feelings are important.
Sure.
And I need to know from you as my leader that that my feelings are also important.
I hear discerning. You've got to be discerning enough to allow people to pour out what they feel because they are valid, and be able to then reflect on those, to then say, okay, could have been done differently? Could it have been, but being able to be a leader who's in a position to receive, and discerning enough to really take the feedback and the feelings of the people to allow that trusting environment that you talk about, where people can really believe that yes, we are going the direction that I may not understand it for now, but I trust the process because of everything else that lines up in there.
It's also very important to understand that relationships are a two-way street, if you like, because you also have a duty. You can't just always be blaming the leader, complaining about the leader.
Sure.
You also have a responsibility to make this work. Where do I need to adjust?
Sure.
Myself as the one who's following now for this relationship to work, right? So it's not just the leader who must always be adjusting.
Sure.
It's also, whenever people complain about their leaders, I always remind them that you also have a responsibility to make this work, right? And there are situations where I just need to understand this about my leader, right? But there are situations where you can influence a change in how things are being done. And you must be wise enough to know that difference, right? Which are the things that are non-negotiable for my leader? Which ones I can negotiate? So it's everybody's responsibility, really.
I love that. It's a two-way relationship. And whilst, yes, there's a parent and a child relationship, and the parent probably needs to craft a way forward, the child is also responsible in communicating and also understanding the rules of the game and the guardrails at home, I guess. Yeah, sure. The one area that I am pretty sure you have gone through a number of times, difficult conversations in leadership. How do you sort of find your way in having healthy but yet difficult conversations as a leader in some of the things and techniques that you got to develop for yourself over time?
Yeah, I was always a straight talker, right? Everybody would know where I stand about something. And my colleagues always say, Nonkululeko, you are left in no doubt about where you are on the issue. But as time went on, I realized that you do need to adjust here and there, right? I'm always ready to make the decisions and have those difficult conversations. Like, for instance, you may not be performing as a partner or whatever. Always willing to have those difficult conversations. And sometimes, difficult decisions that must be taken. For instance, where I remember at SNG, for instance, we came to a place where we're producing chartered accountants in numbers, and we now had this cohort of people who had never qualified, and we needed to operate at a certain level, and we needed to deal with that issue. It was very difficult for some of the partners to deal with, have those difficult conversations or make those tough decisions. And I remember that I had to adjust and understand how sensitive these things were and emotionally taxing on people. And the process took longer than it needed to, because I had to accommodate those sensitivities. And before, I used to be fed up with leaders who can't have those difficult conversations, because that's what we are there for, There are times when, tough decisions have to be taken, and you have to deal with non-performers, for instance, and so on. But at the same time, these things have to be done with sensitivity. You must never forget that we're dealing with human beings.
Yes.
These things must be, yes, they must be done, but how you do them is also very important, right? So how you have those difficult conversations. For instance, there's nobody who is a 100% non-performer, for instance. Start with those positive things,
that you've identified in the person, but there may not be enough, to in terms of what is required. And how much have you invested in communicating these weaknesses? Don't just come now because you are now, fed up. This thing has gone on long enough, but you have not invested in counseling the person, in giving them feedback, and so on. And sometimes because it's difficult to give that feedback, right?
Yeah.
You are talking to other people about these problems, but not to me. So I'm not aware. So by the time you come now and it's time, you feel like, that's it. I'm still on ground zero.
Yeah, sure.
Because I didn't understand. So this communication, again, it has to be constant.
Yeah.
On the way, so that when I take that tough decision, I'm actually satisfied that I've tried to walk this journey with you. I've tried to communicate, but you are the one who was just paying no attention. I didn't see any adjustment in either your performance or your behavior or whatever. And I tell you, when I get to that place where I feel like I've done my bit, I can take those tough decisions. I'm not even, there's no sensitivity there now. The decision has to be taken because I've been patient with you on the way.
So yeah, my take out there, critical is constant communication and being visible as a leader and communicating with your people. It's critical so that you don't only get to that difficult conversation and it's a surprise. I'm assuming, a lot of these difficult conversations, as you're saying, it's usually is a build-up of something. And by the time you get there, if you've been visible enough, you've been communicating all along, it is not even a surprise, hopefully, by the other party in having that particular difficult conversation. But you've also said to us, the how is important. In the beginning, you emphasized a lot around the sensitivities. It's called difficult conversation because it is difficult, and being sensitive in understanding that, therefore, the delivery of the message and understanding the impact on the other party as well is quite critical. But that comes with self-awareness as well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you can't, in a room full of people, be, communicating now these issues, these problems that you have with me, right? There might be a situation where I have to correct you, but how I do that is important. But let's be sensitive enough to understand, even you, as the one who's being led. If you're just going to confront me in a excommeeting about how I'm doing things, you'll get back what you deserve, right? Whereas if you are wise, also, you will, listen, maybe I'm being unreasonable, indeed, in this meeting. But a wise follower, for instance, will know that, okay, maybe I can take this now, but in private, I go back to you and say, that was actually unfair or unreasonable in this way and that way and that way. So, you have to be sensitive all round and wise all round. Because I promise you that it is not the CEO who's going to leave, it is you who's going to leave. So how you deal with these things also is important.
Sure. Amazing. We're getting really good nuggets, I can tell you. And maybe as we wind down our conversation, the one that also is usually maybe unspoken to is the so-called nonverbal communication. Our faces, they communicate something. You spoke about it when we started to say the way that you actually even show up in your dress code, it already says something. Our body language, biggest betrayer of the heart and versus what we actually at times say in our minds. So how do we align? How do we align the mind and everything else in really showing up again with authenticity, knowing that the rest of the body will communicate whether you like it or not?
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I really personally had to learn because, as I'm saying, I'm an open book. If I'm not happy with you, I'll show you immediately that I'm not happy with you, and so on. And because I'm a strong personality, the way I used to give it to you, was sometimes just not kind, and these are the things that I had to learn to adjust. That because I'm a strong personality, I need to be conscious of softening up, softening up my tone as well. What I didn't when those early days when I was young, right? It's these learnings, we're always learning, as you are saying, and just understanding that leading people is not easy, right? And people will make their own decisions regarding their own life, no matter how powerful you are, right? And I'm saying even your housekeeper, for instance, if you don't learn to adjust and treat them with respect, they're just gonna leave you and leave your 1-month-old baby alone the whole day. You'll find out when you come back that they actually just left.
Sure.
So I'm just saying, when you are leading people, you just have to know who you are, right? I mean, there are people who are strong and have this pleasant personality that they don't have to do much, but there are some of us, like me, who had to appreciate that not everybody is going to receive your strong personality. How do you then adjust without losing your authenticity? It's very important that we mustn't lose ourselves in the process of growing up. Because for me, it's about maturing, it's about growing up, it's about knowing yourself, right? More and more. That's when then you're able to make those adjustments. It's very difficult because people will form those opinions and they will make their own decisions based on those opinions, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I guess in the age of also social media, technology, there's a lot of communication now on emails, on different platforms, and so on. And what would you, maybe just as we close, are there any things that you are picking up nowadays? You're saying, for this particular generation, this is what you've got to be aware of, as these many things are in your stable.
See how media will always have the perfect picture for the story.
Yes.
Because you're communicating, maybe you were, in a public meeting, whatever, capturing that picture. And then you do something, they have the perfect picture to match the story. So you've learned a lot from those kinds of experiences.
Sure.
That you must never forget, in the heat of the moment, to know that people are noticing, pictures are being taken. You want to always be happy with the picture that is there. They must actually not find that picture at all, I mean, as you grow up. You can imagine in the times of social media and everything is public now, right?
Yeah.
So we have to be even more mindful of how we present ourselves, how we come across, the tone that we use, and so on. And there will be those times, and you must forgive yourself when you respond in the heat of the moment. You don't have time to think and adjust. Unfortunately, those times are there, and you must just forgive yourself times like that.
Sure.
But it's all about this mindfulness. They talk about this mindfulness.
Yeah.
And mindfulness is all about
just being present in the moment.
Yeah.
That's when, for instance, we talk about, are you even present in this conversation that we're having? You know, your eyes are elsewhere, but you're talking to me. Maybe you are listening to whatever your thoughts are. You're not even listening to me, and therefore you are not able to discern what to do because you are not properly listening. And people can see, you know, even as you greet someone, you know, you may be greeting me and you're looking elsewhere because that communicates that I'm not even important to you then.
Yeah.
You know, if you can even give me that moment of just looking me in the eye and you greet me properly with respect.
Sure. That's an interesting one. I won't go too much into it, but because as Africans, and I'll talk for myself, I was taught when you greet and you interact with old people, you go with humility. And even that humility meant not necessarily looking straight into the eyes of somebody. And, you know, those cultural differences, sometimes we carried them as you got into the corporate culture, which is extremely different to where you've been brought up. So it's also an interesting, and I think it's a bit careless of, you know, cultural diversity and how we accommodate it within, I guess, the communication space and in what it could mean for different people. But with that being said, sure, Nonkululeko, we can sit here for the whole day and really draw from your well of knowledge and well of wisdom if we had the time. But time is not necessarily on our side. We are thankful for you to spend this time with us. The author of Awakened to My True Self. And I guess leadership, as we have spoken, it really is showing up as yourself. So I encourage you to continue this particular conversation in reading. Awakened is available on Amazon, as far as I know, not sure other platforms, so you can get it online for yourself to basically continue to really just learn a lot more on how you can carve your own leadership journey. And thank you very much for joining us, and really honored and looking forward to having many more other conversations. And that's it for today's LeadForward series. Just remember, every step you take towards your purpose, you give somebody else permission to elevate. So keep standing tall, keep showing up, and keep leading forward. My name is Thuto Masasa. Until the next time of LeadForward series, where we keep telling stories about leadership.